Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. Solar Effect, or Shotty for the RB Talk Show. Tonight's guest, we got one of the top important public figures in the music business who's been around for 30 plus years. His name is Al Manerson. He has worked with so many legendary artists that we definitely going to break down, his history in the business. And plus, he grew up in the same area as New Edition, in Boston, Massachusetts and stuff. And I want to say this, man, thank you all for, man, being part of this journey. This is 494. I got like 6 more interviews to go, I got like 5 more interviews to go that I crack 500 and everything and stuff like that. So I can't wait to talk about that. Hey, what's going on, V? Make sure you guys follow V's Vintage on Instagram. That's VEEZ Vintage. Make sure you guys follow her on Instagram. She's a PR, publicist relations, and can't wait to do that. I love the black on you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I try to switch it up. You know what I'm saying? And try to do something different, when it comes to different colors. It's rare to find a shirt that has a certain color, especially a dark tone color. You just hoping that it stands out. Yeah, so I've been on my A game, when it comes to that and stuff. Man, I hope everybody's doing good and everything. And I tell you one thing, these months are flying by quick. I ain't gonna lie to you. I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, dang, within like almost a week and a half, so I'll be in Covington, Georgia, real soon and stuff like that, And looking forward to saying, yes, I'll be there from May the 1st when I arrive, and I leave May the 4th at that time. So I can't wait to meet up with R&B hip hop award winning group back for interview them and stuff. And of course, so your boy gonna be hitting the road for for like this upcoming May and the rest of the summer and stuff like that. So I'm gonna be outside, of course, what I'm saying. But man, with that being said, I had a certain fan told me that they loved the interview that I did, so well, Ricky Webster interviewed me for Richmond for a public announcement. He enjoyed the interview and stuff and knowing my history and everything and stuff because I've been doing this for 30 years, what I'm saying? And one thing about me, so you ask me the questions, what I'm saying? I'm gonna break all that down straight up, what I'm saying? And stuff. But also want to talk about this too. A fan, was telling me was like, I noticed when you interview somebody, then certain podcasts like to get that guest. I mean, it ain't no secret, I mean, everybody, try to get whoever that person was on there. But for me, I don't care, because like, what was I interviewed Pam Long like last week or whatever. And, people's like, oh man, I got to interview her. My thing like is, I don't care if you try to get that guest after me, saying sign or insecure person. And hold on for 1 second. Okay, he can take his time. Okay, yeah, Al's on the way. I got a text from PR Pam Broussard, what I'm saying? But so he's on his way, he can take his time. But make a long story short, what I was going to say, I always say this, like I don't trip, if some podcaster, tries to, get the same guess that I did. It's just that I say this: a fan knows when a podcast is on their A game. You know what I'm saying? They know they tell a good story. So that's a big difference. Me, I'm not sweating that individual. So that person definitely not me. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really sweat that, what I'm saying? So, because everybody's different, you know what I'm saying? You got some podcasters, they talk about one thing, then they just go from there. You got some people like, what the hell is this? I done wasted 15, 30 minutes watching this. You know what I'm saying? Because that's why I say everything go wrong. But I'll say this too, though. If you're gonna be a podcaster, and if you've been doing this for a long time, you got to detail, you know what I'm saying? You got to have a clear mind and think what you're going to talk about. That's the big difference. Not everybody's built like that, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times it's a mental thing. I see some podcasts that they take a picture with a bunch of celebrities and everything. And I'm like, okay, what you doing is cool, but at the same time, they looking like, okay, you hype yourself up. I want to know, are you like this when you interviewing me? And sometimes as an artist and a team, they could tell, you know what I'm saying? And stuff. And you got some of those be like, man, I'm not gonna risk my name be on that show. No lie. So yeah. Oh, I want to say this too though. I'm gonna be coming to Chicago, Illinois. That will be in July. And I'm supposed to be meeting up with Dio and Akon. So fingers crossed, try to get that going. Uh in between that, you know what I'm saying, I will be in Virginia Beach, be on lookout soon and stuff like that, you know what I'm saying? I know Little James is coming. That'd be like in November, so your boy's gonna be everywhere. So uh I can't wait, you know what I'm saying? In New York, NYC, they try to get me and stuff, so I'm gonna be everywhere, you know what I'm saying? So I can't wait to do that, so link up with people. But I'm gonna tell you this though. I know because people ask me, would I ever do stand up? I don't want to be no stand up comedian, but I would say this though. I rather like host a gig, and all the reason why I say that though is because once I do, host and stuff, and there been some talks about me hosting some stuff in Virginia Beach and V Vintage. She was talking about that, and what I do, I could definitely make y'all laugh for a good 10, say 10 or 15 minutes, say warm up the crowd and talk about music and, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I can't wait to do that so far. But I want to say this too, for me, you know, uh, when I would when going back to Ricky Webster when he was interviewing me, and I thought to myself, I said, man, uh, when people think they know you, they think that you only been around for a couple of years, but they don't realize the journey. You know what I'm saying? You've been doing. I mean, I started off, making like concert flyers for certain promoters, certain promoter that went from there, that, helping artists sell their CDs and, what I'm saying, I was doing all kinds of stuff back then, you know what I'm saying? And I even did like online radio, you know what I'm saying, once upon a time. So and yeah, man, so I've been doing this for a long time. So what I'm doing now is nothing new. Only difference between then and now is that technology is more advanced than it was back in the day, you know what I'm saying? So that's the honest God truth and everything and stuff. But yeah, I want to say this too, when I was when I was talking to Ricky Webster, he said that I guess one of the fans or whatever, it's always us as black people talk about, well, we was distracted by the background, talking about the RB Talk Show logo, the video background. First of all, my thing like this, you don't say nothing when Soul Train has their video backgrounds. They've been doing that since like the 70s. So you didn't say nothing, when Video Soul got that background. You don't see nothing with LTV and BT Awards. But when I do it, oh, it's a problem. And like I told Ricky, I was like, the people that support you, was it paid to your history and learning something, or they would just focus on the background? So that's why I say, you got black people and ignorant niggas. And ignorant niggas say ignorant stuff. I hate to say it though, but it's the honest God truth. And we got to do better. You know what I'm saying? I'm a type of person, I don't care what's in the background. I just want to see, like what the host talking about and what the artists, saying as far as when it comes to great questions, you know what I'm saying? Because we live at a time, because I'm gonna tell you what it is though. We live in a time where people forgot how music platforms are, how it was then. Because reality shows and stuff we put on social media has flooded a person's mind frame to a point where they forgot how television used to be and other platforms and everything. So it's sad, that's like that. You know what I'm saying? The focus, B said, the focus should be on yours and the art is facts. You know what I'm saying? So, this is what we do, what I'm saying? Because we have a platform that's called being creative. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's all about. You know what I'm saying? Nobody should not be sweating that. So yeah, we just gotta do better, man. That's the honest God truth, what I'm saying. I really hate that, what I'm saying, it's going on and stuff. But yeah, man, his stuff and everything. I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, I love to manifest and be creative, and I know God got big things for me. Because I'm noticing though, as no offense to black men, black women, we gotta stop thinking of the worst all the time. That's why things get blocked, what I'm saying? And I love my black women, but I just wish sometimes stop letting your emotional emotions get the best of you. Cause it seems like that's all I hear from outside people all the time. Uh, for me, you know, um, I thought to myself, man, all my blessings has been coming through, one by one. I just did an interview with Voitage ATL not too long ago. Uh, I just had, with Brandy and Monica leave comments on my Instagram page and, all this other, great things going on and stuff. But make a long story short, I thought to myself, I was like, man, 2026 is my year. It's one thing I can easily say that, but I rather, take it in the moment and just really go there. You know what I'm saying? Because I thought to myself, like, when I did try, like the last several years, like everything was kind of like flat. So I thought to myself, like, it must be something I'm doing wrong why things ain't going in the direction I wanted to go. So once I figured it out, I was like, okay, it's common sense, so let me, get things steamrolling, then I could just, basically go from there, what I'm saying? And I remember a long time ago when I was in my 20s, I remember I used to always see this poster and I saw like this ad on social media. It used to say, it would say like Virginia, it would say Chicago, New York City, DC. It would say it all the time. Never said Los Angeles, and I thought to myself, like, God is telling me something like, those are some of the places I'm going to be at. You know what I'm saying? And I know it's going to come together and stuff like that. So looking forward to whatever it is going to happen. You know what I'm saying? But trust and believe it's going to be about money because I'm all about that paper, like John Witherspoon used to always say and everything and stuff. But I had a fan that hit me up last night in my DM, and she was telling me, she said, what is up with some of these independent artists that's blessed to have a position. They tour with other artists. She didn't say all, but she said some of them, and they act like some of who they ain't. It's like they're shifty, because she told me about this one lady she met at a concert. And I don't want to mention the female's name because I interviewed her before a while back. And I wasn't really shocked and not really surprised. And I just told her, well, I know the lady, recently, I'm not going to mention her name. And I told her, I said, sometimes with people, you just never know, what day and night they're on. It's like the porch light is on, but ain't nobody, coming outside to, shut it off. And it could be daytime outside. You know what I'm saying? It's just that some people when they're in a position, you just don't know what level ahead they are. You know what I'm saying? But I just hate it sometimes. Some folks are like that. You know what I'm saying? But for me, I'm gonna tell you this. For me, it's like no matter how much popularity I've done achieve, like you could type in the R&B talk show and it would tell you everything about me. You know what I'm saying? From like the video links and everything to if you go on the AI mode side, it would tell you all about my history. But I don't try to pretend to be some who I ain't. For one, I was not raised like that. Say I'm very confident and conscious who I am as a person. I don't see men and women over the years that try to chase what was out there that never even existed. So for me, I love God, I love life, say I respect those who respect me. I enjoy my fans. So ain't nothing like, having a reality of common sense. So yeah, I never let certain things get to my head. It's like RB Talk Show flyer was singing on Entertainment Night Live when I was one of the top people that broke the news on Don Lewis that passed away. When I broke the news on Ayla Vert's daughter, that was on Essence Magazine and all these other major magazines. So I ain't let that get to my head. But I take in the moment I was blessed. You know what I'm saying? Even though I couldn't celebrate the way I wanted because it was a sad situation on both parties, but also too that my work was appreciated. You know what I'm saying? Because one thing about being on social media all the time, people pay attention. They might not say that to you, but they're looking. So and yeah, you think about it. They could have shown the Breakfast Club, they could have shown what was it, the Shade Room and all the other stuff. So for me, it just I'm blessed, man. Just to even have my stuff seen in that type of light, than everything else, what I'm saying? But it drew a lot of followers towards my way. And that's one thing I said when I was being interviewed on certain platforms. One thing about me is that I will never tell a lie on my people. And I know it's hard for people to program that in. You'd be like, oh, this is true. Why would I sit here and lie about a woman or man that done passed away? That'd be wrong to me. So yeah, crazy. And here he is. What's going on, brother?
Hey man, how you feeling, man? How you doing?
Oh man, nothing much, man. Just have a conversation with the audience, brother. Just to kill a little time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. That was I think the last my last thing just ran behind, but I apologize for getting on late.
Oh no, it's all good, man. I was telling the PR, he can take his time, what I'm saying? So it ain't no worries, sit on the end and everything. Man, just welcome to the RB Talk Show. And
Yes.
I read your history. I said, this brother got a long history, man, longer than a Bible dictionary. I said, good Lord, man. When he ever took a break?
Yeah, there's no stopping in this, man. Not at all. Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
before I get to your history, so I want to give you your flowers, for you to be one of the hardest working man in the business, for 30 plus years, for what I've seen and heard, your name is definitely well respected in this business, for you to remain humble, enjoy life, helping people get their careers to where it's at and see where they are now. That's incredible. I always believe that God had written a story of our lives before you have thought of. Then once you do deliver here, then you'll go whatever direction. Sometimes you can make things go left, you
Right.
can just go right. It's all about just staying straightforward. So I just want to give you flowers.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Today. Now, so correct me on this. Now, you grew up in Boston.
Yes. Grew up in Boston, Orchard Park Projects. I was born there and then went into another project and then, so on and so forth. But yes.
Yeah, yeah, so when I read up on it, I said, "Wow, man!" So now, when you was a kid, did you meet new initially? I went to school together, or did it come to like by the time you got in the business?
Yeah. So I knew of the one I knew out of there was Ricky, but I didn't know him. But I used to hang with his brother. He has a brother named Butchie Bell, and Tony Bell. So I knew an assistant named Tawala. And the funny story I always say with them is they did the biopic for the New Edition movie, and there was a part in that movie where I think they went through Ricky's house, and it was in the projects. It was that Orchard Park projects that came from. The significant part that I don't think people got that I kind of picked up, but I said nobody's going to get this is when they walked through the house or the apartment, there was probably about 10 people or more in that apartment. And when he walked through the rooms, the significant part is he has almost 10 brothers and sisters. Ricky Bell. So that's why I was like, oh, those are all the brothers and sisters. His sister used to hang out the window and yell at people going by and all of that stuff. So yeah, we knew each other. Then I met Bobby and Tommy Brown later on. I did the rest of them I knew later in years, but Tommy and Bobby I knew. I was almost managing Bobby on his Don't Be Cruel album. I had an opportunity, but I passed it on to somebody else at that time.
Wow, man. That's amazing to kickstart, some people's careers and see how their road was. And
Yeah,
yeah, Don't Be Cool. That was kind of like Michael Jackson Thriller to us fans.
yeah. So, and people say, why wouldn't you do that? Well, at that time, Bobby's a little crazy, but I also had just started at A&M division, the gospel division, where I was working with. Never did gospel before, but that was my first time doing it. But I worked with Shirley Caesar, Clark Sisters, Mighty Clouds, all of those artists, Al Green, so it was just Reverend Milton Brunson, a bunch of those type of artists in there, Tremaine Hawkins. So it was an experience. So I learned from that and then went into the secular. So that was it.
Oh wow, man, that's awesome right there. So growing up, when it came to your parents or your mom and dad, who inspired you, to mold and shape you, when you was coming up as a kid?
I would probably say both my parents. My mom was kind of like, I was blessed to have them both. They both passed, but I blessed to have them both. My mom was more the steady rock, and my father was really a voice. And at 6 or 7 years old, he was a musician. He played the congas. He's a cuneta, which in his world, he was a master drummer. So like there's an old saying that he made up is like when people go to heaven, when people die, they go to heaven. When drummers die, they go to Cuba. You know what I mean? Because of drummers. So I learned at 7 years old, I started playing. The problem was they didn't know I was left-handed. So I was getting yelled at everything because I was playing backwards and all that. But so I ended up playing, I'm ambidextrous. I could play both ways, so that whole thing. But yeah, so my brothers and sisters, we all learned to play an instrument at that early age. Yes. So it was destined to go in this direction.
Wow. So by the time you're 18, it's what you love growing up to do what you do. What was the mindset at 18 years old? Coming out of high school and everything.
Yeah, so I was in a couple groups going through. I was able to be around the Larry Woos, the Maurice Stars, and all of those guys that were coming up, so I was around all of that greatness at the time. Another guy was Dwayne Omar, was pretty prominent in our area. At that time, after I left high school, I went into college. But when I went to college and we were forming these different groups, I learned about the time and these different groups and everything like that. And then afterwards, came out and there was a job offer for me, and I worked at building missiles for Trident One program for
Right.
Raytheon. I was in charge of the only black person on there for the Trident One missile, but that wasn't my call. And I quit after a year and started playing the saxophone in my local neighborhood. My parents thought I lost my mind, so that didn't me back. And then, a gentleman approached me and asked me would I want to be in the business, and I filled out an application, and there was a story before the story. So filled out the application, and in Boston there wasn't a lot of black executives that had the title of vice president. I go to New York, he sends me there. Well, first of all, there was the NAACP. It was an alcoholic guy reforming people, giving people jobs, and I told him he can't give nobody a job, and he called up and did affirmative action thing. I go to New York. They try to give me the interview at MCA. A black guy comes out, and I said, "Hey, I'm supposed to meet your boss, the vice president." He said, "I'm the vice president." So I was a shocker for me the first time I saw it, and that whole thing. But it went on to that, and then once I got a opportunity to interview for a job, I went to New York, thinking I had it, and it was 20, 30 people ahead of me, and I was mad. I thought I had the job, so I took my money and asked him where his boss was, and I flew to Chicago where their headquarters was. And I just walked through past the secretaries and everything. I saw the name on the door, and I knocked on the door and then opened it. And his boss was in there. And the immature side of me came in. My eyes hit the ground. I got the humminers, and they're asking me like, "Why are you in the meeting?" And then I just told them that I did. I was supposed to have the job in New York. And then the next thing I know, they were like, "He cut the competition, hire him on the spot." So that's kind of how I maneuvered it.
Correct me on this. You played a key role of marketing Mariah Carey's debut album. Are you helping get signed or something like that?
which no, so Mariah Carey, I worked in at Columbia Records under Ruben Rodriguez, he passed, and Donnie Ienner and that team. And so there was a team of us that we got the project Mariah before she was Mariah. We had that project. Tommy Mottola sent it, and we had a mandate. So I was part of a team that actually built that. It was, I always like to pay homage to executives, the Ken Wilsons, the Eddie Pughs, and all these guys that were great executives that actually I worked with, and a lot of them had taught me along the way. And we were a collective that built that project up. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, because I remember when Vision Love first came out, and it's like here it was. You had After Seven, Janet Jackson tearing up the charts. Quincy Jones' Back on Block album was out, and then when I saw it, it was like one of those unsuspected moments, and I was like, "Who is this lady right here?" And the more I kept seeing the V on BT and MTV everywhere else, in my mind as like a 9-year-old, I was like, "Wow, she's gonna be around for a long time." I'm thinking like a grown man at 9 years old, like that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's funny with her. I had a showcase with her and Rage Against the Machine. Very odd combination because I worked with Rage
Wow.
Against the Machine as well, and it worked. I didn't even explain it. They got in the room and tore that place up between her hitting those notes and Rage Against the Machine showcasing for the first time, and they were the other extreme, performance. It was intense. Yeah, it was
Wow. Now, you work with Public Enemy, and then bounce between was it Shirley Caesar, and Clark Simpson. How did you know how to market with the genres of the artists? And you some stuff I hear they be like, well, we don't know what to do with it person, but I could do something with that. So how did for you, that was like more common sense, how to market the artists and put them out there.
Yeah. So as a kid or coming up through, I was a big KRS-One and a Rakim, of course, and there's all these
Yeah.
debates, moves, whatever. And I got to give it to KRS-One, even though Rakim came and took it to another level. So I was a hip hop and a jazz head because jazz was out at that time as well in R&B. So I listened to the whole thing. There was a gentleman by the name, and I'll just give you the one story on how it was influential. There was a gentleman by the name of Ruben Rodriguez who was in charge of the Black Music Department in Colombia,
Right.
and there was a European that was at the table when every black kid in America had a Public Enemy. At this time, I was the young kid, the young kid coming up, and they were sitting around the room, and they were like, "Well, we need to figure out how to get this bigger." And so he turns to me and he asks me, and Chuck D always gives me credit when we see each other. He says to me, he says, "Hey man, well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, every black kid in America has this." I said, if you want to get to the white kids, it needs to go on the Rolling Stone cover of Rolling Stone or one of these magazines. And the lady shouted out, "Well, I don't know. It's going to be about 80,000 for the cover." And I sunk down in my seat because that was
Right.
a lot of money to me. And he turns around and says, "Shut up and just do it." And I was like, "Ooh, okay, all right." So I felt like if it was going to go wrong, it was going to be it was going to be blamed on me. But that's just one of the things that And then for as far as Shirley Caesar, those guys taught me a lesson. I had never done gospel, and when they say hip hop is gangsters, there's no bigger gangsters than gospel people. I'm just sorry to
Right.
say, I have to put it out there. They don't play when it comes to their money, and I learned so much from them on their hustle. They don't leave a dollar on the table. They turn every dollar over between the free will offerings, the selling. There was a guy named Reverend Milton Brunson who was pretty big back then, and he used to sell the records out of the back of his bus. And I used to have to tell him, "Hey, you know what? Continue to do it, but at least let some of them get scanned so people can give you credit." Because the problem with gospel music is they're never giving you enough money for production and different things because they don't think it sells. But there's a church on every corner. There's, AME and all these things. But because they do their hustle, you don't see it as you would see on a pop record or urban or crossover record. So it's a very unique business, period. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because I remember in the early '90s, the most people I heard was was it like Shirley Caesar, Clark Simpsons, BBCC Winers, the Winers, and that's about it,
Yeah.
until like Kurt Frank and everybody else came through later on and everything.
It was a lot. Richard Smalls I had, DC Talk, which was huge, which was a hip hop, one of the first hip hop gospel groups. I'm trying to think. There was a lot of there was a Winan that it was probably nobody even knows. His name was Daniel Winan. He was out. We had him. Whitley Phipps, who crossed over. Rosie, I had
Wow.
not Iggy Pop, but the other one, Amy Grant. We had Amy Grant. You know, and she was
Oh
big.
man, I love her. Yeah.
Yeah, so I worked all of those projects, or worked with all those projects, and they were all successful projects that we had. So that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, big shouts to AB Grant. You know, it's funny. I don't think she really gets her flowers that she deserves and stuff, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. TD Jakes, Where Thou Loose, that was us. We did that, and then it became everything else that he was successful. But it started at the label. You know, when we
Wow.
worked the first Third Woman's Thou Loose project. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, because we said AB Grant, and I remember at the time, because as looking back, well, I got, you know, I'm glad I'm older now, I figured it out. But back then I was confused. I was like, she a gospel artist, but her music, you know, it was like pop, it sounded like a pop soul R&B, and I was like, what direction was going?
Yeah, and back then it was weird because I always talk about the one artist that really pioneered a lot, that paved the way. She doesn't get much credit, which is Tremaine Hawkins. So I had Tremaine Hawkins back then. She had a record called Fall Down. That was a big record back then. And when she did the record, the club people in New York loved it. She was booked at every club, but then the church people were like, "It's blasphemy, and if she goes there, then we're going to oust her." And that's what they turned their back. But now you got Kurt Franklin and all that, so people like Tremaine Hawkins actually paved the way for artists like Kurt Franklin and those artists who now can perform with Beyonce if they want to. So that's kind of what it
Wow.
is. Mhm.
So, you know, then around that time, you know, when you got, you know, serve as the vice president, you know, a promotion and marketing for Epic Records. So go from Columbia to Epic, was that a hard decision, or was that was kind of like more like a smooth transition, go from one situation to another?
Good question. So at that time, I'm a loyal person for by default in most cases, with especially with the music, and Columbia wanted to keep me there. But back then there was always war bids, and I was kind of in the top five of what I did. So there was a war bid between Epic and Columbia, even though they were under the same umbrella. You got to remember, before they were Sony, they were
Yeah.
CBS Records, and so there was two separate situations, but distributed by CBS, and then brought in with Sony. It changed hands. Well, the war bid. The people on the Columbia, and Eddie Pugh and all of them, I give them shouts out. They were on the Columbia side. People don't know this to this day, but they were the ones that said, "Go over there and get your opportunity," because I was being loyal to them, and some other people were trying to keep me. So I went over there, and that's when I ended up at Epic. But I started out as a local in Detroit. I worked in the Detroit market, and I brought out LL Cool J and all these different artists down in Detroit, and then ended up going through the ranks, and then went to Atlanta and tripled their sales and marketing stuff in Atlanta for everything down in that southeast region, and became on the board for the city. They had a day supposedly named after me, and I was in charge of the entertainment committee, and my vice president was Jermaine Dupree for the city of Atlanta when I was there. It was around 96, 97 on that time. And from there, we had so much success. Ron Sweeney, which is Easy E's attorney, and that whole thing, when you see
Wow.
Most Wanted, the attorney in there was my boss. And he asked me to come up to New York and take over, basically threatened me to come up there to take over. I became vice president at that time. We broke Uncle Sam at that time. We broke was Capadonna. Even though the Woo was popping, we still had the Capadonna, and we had the Ghostface Killer. All of those projects were our projects. I had the Cameron, I had the Charlie Baltimore's, the Brownstone. So we broke all of that stuff at that time. What's going on there? Gave Snoop his first the 187. That was our project for deep cover soundtrack, etc.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you know, it's amazing though, too, though, when I look back at it, because I remember, you know, when you was on, she's on Columbia, like the marketing on every artist, man, it was like heavy. And looking back and you see the whole sim change by the time you left, like Columbia was not, seemed like no matter what they was trying to do, it's like they like slowly collapse, no
Yeah.
matter who was on top or who was in the middle or who was like right, right under,
Yeah, yeah,
and
it's a
everything.
trip. I think, I always try to go on, and my part of my mission is also making sure that people know people like Gerald Busby and Sylvia Rona, these people, because without these certain executives, there wouldn't be a lot of these artists. And now we don't have, like I say, the bar is really low for what's out there music wise, with the exception of a few. And so we don't have any superstars no more, like the way we used to have a lot of them. So
Yeah.
that's part of the mission as well.
Yeah. Now on Epic, the roster elite, Michael Jackson, Babyface, Sade, G.Y. Usher, Raphael Sadiq.
Yeah.
And I had to think about, because I remember Raphael Sadiq did do a solo song for the oh
Soundtrack
God.
for Woo.
Yeah.
For Woo. That's what
And that was kind of
horrible,
like his
horrible
debut.
movie, but hit for us.
Yeah. And stuff. So with the shift change over there, what was it like? I would start off with working with the King of Pop.
Michael was amazing. He was a prankster, and all I can tell you is, like, he would invite the whole staff or all of us over for lunch, and the day of, the minute before, on the way over, then cancel. So he would always do all different things. But the one thing I really appreciate about him is two things I could tell you real quick. He's a very shrewd business person. I just remember two incidents where, one, we had the cover of it was a Free Willy soundtrack, and they wanted to put the European kid on the cover. Well, Mike did, and we had this whole big meeting. Everybody in the North America was on it, and being low management at that time on the totem pole, I was listening more than I was speaking, and they were against him putting the cover because of all the accusations. Well, Mike was going along with it and understanding, and then he just said, "You know what? Put it on. Just do it." And it was one of the most successful situations. Then in return, he comes around and does his own label, um, music. I forget, MJJ label that he has, and he signs a group called Quo. He signs his nephews, the three T's, and then he signs this group called Brownstone. So he did a deal with us, well, did deal with Sony for $1 billion. But yet, the thing in the deal, that time the business was only making $1 billion a year. So at that time, the thing is, it has to be mutually agreed upon. And so they had they hit a milestone, a rock in the hard place where he could not, anything else he wanted to do past that label, he was getting rejected, and they wasn't agreeing. So that's when you saw Michael started getting with the Nation of Islam, and now Tommy told us the devil and everything, because they wouldn't allow him to do what he wanted to do past that. And we had success with that, with two out of the three, which was the three T's were a gold album overseas, and Brownstones, we had platinum with Brownstone, which was under them.
Yeah, I remember seeing the market on TV at around that time. It was like between the history era, the groups that was signed to his label and stuff. And I said, "Wow, man, like you don't see that no more." It was like a steady rotation, man. Like every time you turn on television, you don't say you would see it right there.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow."
Yeah, they were good. They were good. Jerry Greenberg and those guys that were running that label, really good. We ended up, handling the bulk of the load of it, but they were instrumental in getting us what we needed to be able to break them.
Working with, man, one of the greatest songwriters of all time, the greatest songwriter of all time, Babyface. What was it like? Now, did you market the album? Was it like the Day album or something like that, if I'm correct?
Day album, the Cool in You. I mean, we can go back for a few. I think the only one that wasn't on with the Whip Appeal, all of those things. The thing about Face was, Face is very unique in the sense that I'm very close to that family too. His brother and I are kind of best friends and everything, like Kavon and those guys. But he's a very humble, amazing individual. I think the part of the branding, you have to know your projects. Back then, Face was so blunt that for media training, to be able to interview, he wasn't really one of the better interviewers, because if you ask him the question, he'll just tell you straight up. If you ask him, is the sky blue, he's just going to say blue. But what he had an amazing sense of fashion back then, and all of the magazines used to pick him up because of what he used to wear and the music. So he was a brand. And then the other thing that was interesting that he's doing now that he didn't do for years is he never really toured. He would come out with us on promo. So now when you see him out, whoever gets the chance to see him, it's a treat, because back then he wouldn't tour because he was doing so much production. Back then, touring was the last thing on his mind. So, but he's an amazing artist. But Face is definitely, one of those guys that's amazing out here that we had a lot of good work and times with.
Yeah. I could imagine. I mean, all the stuff he done wrote. I was like, man, I don't think he had time for himself to really like sit back and enjoy vacation.
Yeah, yeah, and he's definitely a student of the game.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sade. And I've noticed though about her when she puts it out, she puts it out. Also, like she disappeared for maybe like a whole decade or like
You are
5
the
years.
first person that got the cheat code for her. I'm gonna tell you because so the way we marketed Sade, and again, I always give flowers to the executives. I, had the staff and everything, but there's a lady named Laverne Perry. I give her all the credit. What people don't understand is we've had artists that were like Sade. We had the Bosches, we had the Desirees, and we had a bunch of artists like that. But the difference is the way we market everything is we look at the street. Like I look at every artist as they have their own street. And on Sade Street, these certain things belong. Well, Sade, what we would do is we put an album out, it'd be one song. But the PR person, Laverne Perry, she was so all over this and so really adamant about her that she would take and make sure that Sade was on every media cover, all the covers and things. So when you got a chance to get to meet Sade and learn, you learn more about Sade from seeing Sade and watching her fashion sense and little girls wanting to dress like her. Then you did the music, and then we starved the market because she would disappear and that whole thing with their stories that that are in between there. Yeah. So yeah, he's definitely that.
Yeah, what was it like working with the young Genuine? This like when Pony first came out, and stuff. Was he, I know like with him having his own unique style, was there anything he was trying to chase for, or you guys already do exactly what y'all need to do?
So the story with Genuine is very different from everybody else. The Genuine, when he got to us, Genuine had, sorry, Genuine, I'm telling you, we had the lightning bolt, sideburns, the teeth, everything. So he was, from Virginia, and he was a little different. He could dance. He was talented as heck. He came out of that camp of where Leah and all of those guys came. But the thing about Genuine was he was being polished as he went along. So when we got the record, and here's how history goes. I'm in Atlanta, and at this time, bass music was happening. All the stuff was Jay McGowan, 69 Boys, all of that stuff was going on, and so the record Pony was not at the BPMs as the rest of the country that was in. It was only relatable to DC and New York. So in Virginia, but they didn't. But the rest of the country, from Florida to California, was already on the bass music. So what happened was one of the executives asked me to see if we could get somebody to do a mix, and these are the people that were involved. So Little John used to be my intern at Sony, so that was one of the things musically. But there was a guy, Empress Cersei, and Chris Lover Lover, and Poon Daddy, who you guys know as Ludacris. So
Yeah,
I gave that camp the mix to do a mix, and DJ Empress Cersei and them, they gave me back the mix that you hear that plays everywhere, and that's how it came. And then he ended up coming down, and we broke him through. I would have to give the black schools, the colleges, the Clark universities, the Brown, especially Spelman. Once I brought him down there, he was out of here. It was over. So yeah, so he was a unique situation. He was something we developed and then broke, and then ever since then he was on it. He's been on his own, but he's great talent.
yeah. He was very unique. He was like a combination of Prince slash Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
Wrapped in
yeah,
one.
yeah.
And I don't think we ever see another
Guy.
like it again.
He got a great sense of humor. Good guy. Yep.
Oh, most definitely. Uh, Usher.
Yeah, yeah. So I Usher indirectly. I caught Usher early. So Usher was, and this is wow, it makes all of us old. Usher was 10 when I was working with him, and he had a record out. And some people would know it, some people don't. It was a record called "Just Call Me the Mac." It was the first
Right.
record through us that we worked, and it has some moderate success. I think my unique story with Usher, who's always been his mom. His mom to me was that she was that lady. So because so what happened was Usher's mom had contacted me, and she had asked me about L.A. Reid. And at the time, I didn't really know L.A. Reid to have any good or bad things to say about it. I didn't really know him at that time. And she was trying to decide if she was gonna, if she was gonna sign over there. And little by little, we had a conversation, but it was ultimately her decision to bring him over there. and the rest was history. But there was a pause for a second to decide if he was going to go over there from the mom, and she was doing her homework, and I can't even blame her. It turned out to be the right move.
Wow. Yeah. It is amazing, to see where he's at now in his career, and now he's about to tour with him and Chris Brown. I'm like, wow, two icons, man. I mean, who would have thought, what I'm saying? And
Absolutely.
man, that's amazing, to see that, and then for him, I never seen a male artist like him, besides everybody else, to be so dedicated to
Yeah,
study. He be inspired to have so much influences and stay consistent the way he did, man. That's
absolutely,
incredible, man.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep, yep.
Now, deal with the R&B side. You had a gospel side. What was the relationship or working with Cameron?
Cameron, so I worked with Cameron indirectly. So Cameron, I've been out in the region with him, and while we were doing promotions. But Cameron's situation came from well, Undias and those guys had a deal with us at Sony at Epic, and then I remember meeting what's his name, Jacob Yorks, who was a character who was a good
Yeah.
friend now. But at the time, those guys were running New York, and I just remember having my story with Jacob, and we laugh about it to this day. Is that he came in there and tried to terrorize the building. And he had Cameron, but he also had Charlie Baltimore. And at that time, we wasn't punking from nobody, right? So the building was running around. So on the 51st and the 52nd floor, I just remember walking in the building and everybody's like nervous. Jacob's coming in and people are trying to leave and not be there. And so I didn't pay no mind. So he couldn't find nobody, but he found me. So he
Wow.
comes into my office and he puts his feet up on my little ottoman thing there, and he says he thought at the time, I guess he thought I must have resembled Al B. Sure or whatever, and he said Al used to call me Al B. And he was like, Al B. He's like, hey, what? Hey, have you ever got your ass beat basically? And I said, what are you talking about? So I paused for a minute, and I said, hey man, I said, look it, I said, we're on the 51st floor. I said, you might get me up here. I mean, when I get out, but from the 51st floor to the first, I'm getting mine in. And so he's like, I like you, Al. And we never had no problem. It wasn't really a problem, but we actually gelled right from that moment. And me and him been locked to the side. And then when he went down to Atlanta, he saw that I kind of ran Atlanta when he went down there. And I think he's down in Atlanta now, but we've been friends and we stay in touch to this day. So he's good. He's dealing in movies and things right now. Yeah, so it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Big shouts to Cameron.
Yeah.
Uh, now working with Stokely, what I'm saying, with mid condition and everything. So what relationship like to, work with him all these years, with mid condition. Then of course, he got a solo venture, going on. So how relationship with mid condition came about?
So Stokely had a sister that Kamala. A shout out to Kamala Williams. When I was in New York, we all knew each other, and we hung around. There was a group of us that hung around. She was a Black Power advocate in Harlem. But whatever the circle was, it was a preacher. All of these people that I was around. In New York, there's always a variety. Around the models, you're around everybody. That's anybody in there if you're in the mix. And she was part of the mix, and we were closer over the years and we stayed in touch. And one day she reached out to me and she's like, Al, he called me Moses or Mo, but she's like, Al, can we, she's like, my brother and them are having a little bit of trouble. Can you help them? And so I spoke to Stokely. We had a long conversation and, I guess he could use my service. And I went in there, met with the band, and we've had success. From there, we had Grammy nominations, which they never got Grammy nominated before until I
Right.
got there. I tripled their monies on the road. They didn't have that. And then at some point in time, the Mint hit a ceiling and Stokely decided he wanted to go out and do the things before it was too late that he had in his system. Every artist that's worth their salt has things and they don't like to be stuck in one pigeonhole situation. And he had a lot more to express and he wanted to go out and do it. Like a lot of from Raphael Sadiq to Prince to Michael Jackson, it's the same formula. His came later because he was loyal to the band, a great bunch of guys. So that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, I remember he did a couple of solo tips. The very first I remember was this one guy named Jay Spencer, rest in peace, who was a saxophone song called You Should Be Mine. he did a whole solo thing. And looking back at it, I was like, even though his solo came later, like around 2015, 2016, but that was kind of like the kickstart, what was to come,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
everything.
Absolutely. I mean, he's still putting out records now, and we got #1 records with him and and matter of fact, he got a record right now, Need Love, is on the radio next week. So, I mean, he's been in the mix and
Woo, I can't wait to hear that, man.
yeah, and he's, and this record's a little different because it pays homage to, it's still formula for the women, but it's a conversation with the women on men need love too. But it's how he does it, and I've never heard anybody approach it this way,
Wow.
So it's interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But now, was you a part of collaborate with him on the Rick James play of his life?
Yes, I put that deal together for him, and we carved out. I think it was probably about 30 cities that we did, and once we finished it, he and I went to Houston. He did the rehearsals, and if anybody ever saw the play, they could tell you he bodied Rick. I mean, he bodied Rick, and it was crazy to the point where they wanted to continue, but we couldn't because of our schedule. And then I had recent, like last year and in the beginning of this year, I've gotten calls saying that they're going to audition him for the biopic. Now, whether he gets it or not is a whole nother story, but he did that well. It was really good, successful.
Yeah, because when I heard about it, I read it like, I think it was on Essence or something like that. I said, Stucky playing Rick James?
Yeah.
But they always say never doubt somebody's talent got a hidden talent. I saw I think somebody sent me I think it was like a 35-second clip, and I was like, wow, man.
Yeah, yeah. He put that together. I mean, we just finished a movie with Michael White, and he did. I mean, he played himself in the movie, but the significant part about it'll probably be the streaming soon on every platform. But you're gonna think it's Stokely's soundtrack because most of his music, a lot of his music is in there, like probably about 6, 7 songs from his Sankofa album and stuff like that. So, yeah, he's out here doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you was a part of the beginning of Wale, beginning of his career and stuff, and I remember when he was blowing up all over MTV and stuff like that, man. It's like MTV couldn't get enough of him. I think it was
Yeah.
like 09, 010 and stuff. So what direction you was trying to do to push him out there?
So what my role with Wale's project came to this part. So imagine this going on. So Universal Interscope has him as an artist, and I'm not dealing with him at this time. And you have the greatest producers in the game, from Eminem to Dr. Dre and whatever, and they couldn't figure him out. They didn't understand
Wow.
what to do with him, and they weren't having success, and they ended up dropping him from Interscope. So now Atlanta picks him up, and I get a call, and they call in and ask for this help and the support. So in my mind, I doing my homework on Wale. He's from Nigeria. He's a poet to me. He's a rapper, but to me, he's more of a poet. And and then music in that DC area, that go-go music, there's musicians. He's around musicians. So I had this notion to say, hey, spoke to Stoke and I also spoke to manager and everything. We got in the room, and I was saying, hey, what if we try to just see what the bridge would be from a musician and a poet that come and see what we get. And out of that, Stokely produced half of his successful first platinum album on Atlantic that had this what Stokely did, the CeeLo Green record on there. He did the Meek Mills record on there. There was a few records, but he did half of that album and Love Hate thing. So that combination, and Stokely and Wale became best of friends. Wale always looks at him as his big brother, and they support because his first success came from what we did with him, myself putting the situation together and Stokely producing half that album.
Wow. Yeah, he has. It's like he has like the melodic poetry vibe. It's mixed with hip hop soul and neo soul and stuff. And I never forget the song he did with Miguel. Oh my God, man! Imagine 101.3, be like 6.5, and over they wore that song out like
Yeah.
crazy. I said, his brother earns like he needs to earn like 5, 6 Grammys.
Yeah. So a lot of this, again, when I tell people, I said a lot of this a lot of the executives, with the creative part, like he was over at Interscope and they didn't know what to do with him. So like I give shout outs to the executives that understand this, that help a lot of these. Like in that case, it was a person named, a lady from Africa named Lon Ray, and she was instrumental on believing and giving us the shot to prove that we could help Wale. But Wale had a big voice at that time to
Yeah.
be able to say what he wants. So it's a combination. Gerald Busby, I give him credits for doing New Edition, all these different projects. So there's a lot of these executives. I work with Zane too. So Zane, we had on Epic, we broke it. Hey, Mr.
Oh
DJ.
wow.
But the reason why I bring it up is because Epic got beside themselves, and Gerald Busby swooped in and signed him as an artist, as a group, and they ended up over there on MCA when we were the ones at Epic. So we did the work thinking that, that they were supposed to automatically be loyal to the situation, and they went over and Gerald Busby knew what he was doing and snatched them up. So there's a lot of executives that I always like to shout out, giving them props for it.
Yeah, yeah. R.I.P. to Gerald Busby, Sylvia Rowe. Man, so many great
Hank
executives they
Caldwell,
had.
all of them. Yeah, a lot of them. Benny Medina. I can go on. There's a big list of people contributing. Hey, Ruben Rodriguez, all of these guys. Yeah.
Because I remember, with TV, used to always highlight labels. It was like Columbia, Epic, Def Jam, MCA, Uptown. I mean, it was Atlantic. It was like one of the top 10 main labels you see all the time. And I want to ask you this. I guess it's like every end of the month, well, not every month, my bad. Every end of the year, do y'all look and see how many stats of number ones y'all look at and see what could y'all do to top that?
Yeah. So there's departments. So it's funny you bring that up because just so to give everybody contents of this is that there was an era where there was a black music division, and to this day it's still the same way in the sense of you can't do an ad, buy a cologne, don't go to a concert, do nothing unless it was black influenced. But at that time we had black music divisions, and we had people like the Sylvias, myself, other people who ran divisions, departments, the Lamont Bowes, all these people that were running stuff, and they were successful on breaking acts, including the ushers and everything. And then and in Vogue and groups like that. And then at some point in time when the rock and roll went down and it was out, they had to do something. And my joke is that on their way home, they called their friends and said, "Hey, our department's closed." And they're like, "Well, come on over and run the urban division that they knew nothing about." And so therefore all of the conventions we used to have where we would politic to figure out or showcase or do all of the things and bring radio and all of the highlighting of things. What the problem with the business today, or the concern, is that the bar is so low now, even though there's a few exceptions, that we don't have superstars anymore. They don't because one, they don't know the formula to make them, but two, the bar is low because they're so sidetracked and sidebar with distribution and all these things that they forget the creative spot. These are big distractions that you have to learn, you have to know, but there's a reason why all of that's going on, and it's a control thing. You have neo soul, which should never be neo. D'Angelo is not neo soul. The title was given because of these artists becoming more mainstream, more pop crossing over, and we
Right.
can't have messing with our pop artists that we have these spaces for. So Jill Scott, Erica Badu in her prime was one of the biggest artists of that era,
Yeah.
and but they give them these neo souls, which is sub things of soul. It's not. It's black music. The idioms all cross. Even rock and roll, blues, all of that goes back to black music.
Well, when it comes to artists, the albums bring it to the beats and stuff like that. Was whatever a time you've been like, okay, we can see this be the first single, see how well this goes, then we drop it with the second one. Was there been kind of like a flip a coin, be like, what could work, don't work?
So the formula normally is back in the day, and then moving forward. Now there's no rules to this, but it used to be drop the up tempo first because we had back then DJs and clubs that wanted to play. You had playlisting from the DJs and clubs, and you had street teams, and you threw the party. So you wanted to get that swell of the ground, and then we would call it, sometimes it would be a throwaway record. And why I say that is because that gave you enough time to recognize who the group was. Because, oh, who's this group? Oh, I don't like this record, or I love this record. And then you follow up with the main record, and then you do the crossover record. You try to get to the third single. I remember having these artists we had at one time. I had a group: Kenny Lattimore, the Fugees, Maxwell. Who else was on it? Groove Theory. It was a group called Poor Broken Lonely that Dr. Dre had, and those are the main groups. And I could tell you, we started them through the college, and all of them got broken from these college tours and different things like that. Maxwell, at one point, when he went out, people didn't know whether to clap or boo because he was on his back and his stomach. So they were learning him. The Kenny Lattimore's had the big single. I think it was I forget, it was something you, with you, or for you, or something like that. I forget what it was, but he was known. He had those roses, and I'm sorry, those roses worked back then. I mean, I used to try to hate on the roses, but giving out those roses and stuff, them women love that. They love that. Groove Theory was popping in New York. Fuji's was popping in New York, but it didn't spread yet, so we had to put them out there. So it depends. It just depends on where you're going to take. There's no one right way and no one road. You have to know where you're going to take them to break them.
Yeah. It's crazy how the industry and television has changed because back then, if you watching TV, you could not miss, an album being out, or television have a world premiere, and back then when Michael Jackson had his short film videos in the movie theaters and everything. Now it's kind of like with social media, you will see stuff, it's kind of like a hit and miss. I'd have people tell me, oh, this artist got 90 million views on TikTok. I ain't never heard of it. I didn't see it. So it's not in my algorithm.
Yeah, yeah. It's misleading in some directions. And I don't, the platformers and the people that have to make money off it, I'm not never hate on them. Get your money. I always say get your money.
Yeah.
But I can give you simple things that will make you understand, like, first there's still TV, then there's radio, and then the social media is a lot cheaper. But in this sense that if I have 100 followers and I drop something, it's not going to guarantee me that I double and have 200 or 300 followers. You still have to build that situation up. And I had a client hit me he had 30 million streams, and he had social media popping. And so he didn't collect that much money, but he couldn't monetize it to go on shows. So he called me to ask me to help him monetize the situation. And the simplistic part is, if you went into that marketplace as an artist and nobody knows you, and you performed in a venue, and you say you have 5 people in that room, and you do that 20 times in 20 different cities, when a tour comes, they're always looking for an opening act soft ticket. The first thing that a promoter does, because he's spending his money, he wants to know if you have any history in the marketplace. So while you're still posting stuff, there's artists that are out there getting that money that's monetizing in it. So it depends on what your goal is. Then there's the other. You might need the exposure. So now here's where the TikToks and all those things are. And then you can also monetize those platforms and make a whole thing out of it because you belong on that platform. So you have to understand your product that you're selling. Not everything goes in the same place. It would have the same success, but it doesn't. So we're wrong more than we're right. And I always try to figure the formula for where it's to save you 17 or more steps so you don't be wasting your time or your money.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you probably heard this. I saw a recent interview with Jimmy Iovine about like 2 weeks ago. And he said that digital streaming is going to go eventually collapse. I think he said like in 10 years or 5 years or something like that. But one thing I have noticed, the Michael Jackson biopic, and I see the state where you get the CDs again. And I said, man, we ain't having CDs in 5 years and stuff like that. Of course, the violence are back in. What's your opinions on that part of it?
So here's the thing. I dealt with an artist named Zendaya, and one of the things that we learned was you could be local, and you CDs and stuff and vinyl are on the rise. But the reason why I bring her up is because you have to consider yourself a global project or a local project. And if you consider yourself a global project, she was ambiguous to different countries. What would happen is the countries globally would shout her out and say, oh my God, she must be Latin, or she must be from the Ireland, or wherever the place that they claimed her. But the reason that's important is because the rest of the world is still operating on different rules. They're a little behind, right? So we have people that Japan is still dealing with vinyl. In the UK, they're dealing with everything from CDs to vinyls to everything. And then you got to remember this key: 2017 cars and below are still on the road. Those are CD players. Everything past that, whatever. So there's a market for it. The only reason that it got dictated that it was behind is because the people that were selling it wanted you to get onto the platforms to buy the streaming, because they own more than 45%, and the artist doesn't participate in that. So if I can get you to get on the stream and the artist only gets less than a penny to get off of the streams, who collects more of that money between Universal and say a Spotify? That was the game. But the record business, you got to remember, this is the key point. The record business, the Universals, the Epics, the Sonys, all of those labels, they're not operating on there. They have to hire companies like Orchard and these companies and do partnerships, because that's not their main thing. So they turn into the bank. Where they make their money is on catalog. Example, if you bought back in the day, you bought Michael Jackson on a cassette. Well, they configuration changed into a CD player. So a CD. So now what are you going to do? You're going to buy the same that was on the cassette on the CD. Then you buy it on the vinyl. Then you buy it on the DAT player, et cetera, because that's free money. They already paid for it. So all they're doing is selling catalog. So now they're at this place now where all of the DPs and everybody's at war with everybody, trying to figure out, and they come to the conclusion that, you know, artists' best formula is still going straight to fans, still buying, selling merch in the clubs. But overseas, it hasn't really changed that much. You do that, and then you come back to the DPs afterwards, if you're that, unless your goal is to advertise and market the record, and so then your record just becomes a poster, and you just want everybody to know you're there. And that's where your formula comes in with the TikToks and everything for exposure, and then monetizing situations. But then you kind of convert it back into shows and publishing and all the rest of these things. Sorry, that's probably a long thing.
That's all good.
Yeah.
Man, with that being said, before you get up out of here, what's next for you in 2026?
2026 I love it because we're back into the R&B sphere, and I have projects, a group called Shakespeare that is amazing. They're producers, they're Grammy nominated. They did Yolanda Adams' project. They working with Brandy's daughter right now, a bunch of different situations. But so they're coming out with their music, and you'll hear a lot about them coming. They came out of the Odd Future camp. They worked on the internet, close to Sid, the kid from the internet project. I have Stokely, who next week you'll hear his new record, Need Love, that'll be all over radio and everything, and he'll be on a tour soon, but he's out for shows, especially the New York show. I say, if you haven't seen him, it's one of you better get it while he's around and while he's doing it at this level, because it's one of the best shows out. But we're also involved with a couple of movies, film projects that are coming out. And I go back to that single for Stokes. So when you listen to it, there's a conversation on social right now about women and men and who should be what and whatever. And this record is different because it approaches it from a standpoint that men need love too, but he always speaks a woman's language.
Yeah.
So it's a very unique situation. I think if you get a chance to listen to it, there's a lot of gems and lessons in this new music that's coming. So it's the first time I've heard somebody express it from this standpoint. Usually going after the woman or the guys talking about how cool he is. He's having a conversation in this record about how to get rid of this and bridge these things, because he's usually referred to as the sonic healer. So that's part of his trade program. So yeah, a lot of stuff coming up.
Oh man, I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to hear it, man. You know, and anything that but his pig game is, you know, it's definitely incredible. So I can't wait to hear, you know, that record and everything.
Absolutely.
Man. So with that being said, thank you for taking the time coming on here on the R&B Talk Show. You know, it's an honor to have like you as a legend on here, man. Just telling your story, man. You know, and I was like, let me give his brother his flowers, but he definitely deserves it. And I hope that you do have a documentary of your career, you know, a biopic or something, because you definitely deserve it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I've been asked to do it, and I'm gonna wait. We're still building the story, man. We still got a little bit more to go, a lot more, I should say. But I appreciate you having me on it, and definitely, I think everybody this year is gonna be a fun year for everybody in music. Yeah, just we're gonna be creating new superstars. That's where we're going.
All righty, man. Shoot, a big shout out to the PR, Pay Up Asar for
Yeah,
negotiating the interview. And with that being said, you always welcome to come back.
yep, I appreciate it. Thanks for having. All
All right, you
right,
got it, brother.
yeah, appreciate you. Bye.